All right, this is part, I've lost count. I think it's part 6. Uh-oh. Okay, I'll know when I publish it what part it is. I think it's part 6. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It might be part 7. All right. I just finished the last video talking about the KKK, or I was just starting to, and I think I had to shorten my video because it's a little bit too long. The KKK was started by the Southern Democrats and the Democratic Party. It was to eliminate Republicans. They wanted slavery. They just didn't like the whole, both Northern and Southern Democrats both liked slavery. It's just that the Southern Democrats were willing to secede from the Union to do that, to fight against us in the Civil War. So the KKK was started to try to intimidate people from not voting Republican. And they lynched, actually, 2,300 black men, 1,500 white men. So it was Republicans, it wasn't just blacks. And if somebody said, hey, I won't vote Republican, then a lot of times they would let them go. Their sole purpose in existence, besides they really did hate black people, but besides that, they really didn't want the Republican Party to succeed or thrive, which it did. So they had these things called push cards. They were little cards about this big. If you ever watch David Barton, he has actual push cards with the name and what it would be a picture of. I've seen them, and there's pictures of black and white men in the card. All the black and white men of a party, and like, let's say the Republican Party of Texas was started by 23 black men and 2 white men, but of course Texas wasn't there yet, but and they would be called push cards. And so they would have a picture on the back. They would have the names and addresses of the people that they wanted you to eliminate from the Republican Party, black men and white men. And so that's what they would do. They were solely there to intimidate, kind of like the mob or thugs. That's what they're there. They're there to intimidate so you don't do what you know is right to do. So they were called push cards to eliminate the Republican Party. People just think it was because people hated black people. They did, but it was, they had a reason to do it, not just to show up for an outing. They wanted to eliminate the Republican Party. All right, there's a couple other things I want to go over, and I know a lot of this I'm talking about equal rights, but to me this is such an important part of our history because we don't know it. And just like Paul Revere, the story I told you of Paul Revere, nowadays people are saying, oh, Republicans or conservatives hate black people, they hate minorities, which is the exact opposite of the truth. It really is people who are pro-abortion. Why were the abortion clinics started? I told you the lady that started it hated minorities of any kind, hated poor people and minorities in particular. It's like what's wrong is right, what's right is wrong. Just like the Bible said will happen in the end times. And what happened is a lot of our people that knew our history died. And then we've had generation after generation of really, a lot of times when there's a lot of wealth and a lot of prosperity, people just forget. They forget how hard things had to be fought. They forget that John Hancock, a wealthy merchant, had to give up everything. They forget that Samuel Adams fought his entire life to get freedom and saw what was happening, and really they felt like they were setting up a very godly nation. So I want to go over a couple things just for your information, and also this is information I will want you to know. But first I want to review. 13th Amendment was to free the slaves. Good. 14th Amendment was to give them the rights to be citizens in the state where they live. Remember I told you? People like South Carolina would say, well, you can live here and you can be free, but you ain't going to be a citizen of South Carolina. So they couldn't vote, even if they could have voted. If the voting amendment had been passed, but that one hadn't been passed, they wouldn't have been able to vote because they weren't citizens of that state. And then the 15th Amendment was passed so that they could vote. So 13th freed the slaves, 14th gave them the right to be citizens in the states where they were from. Of course, they were United States citizens, but the states weren't letting them be citizens and have the rights of citizens. The 15th Amendment was to give them the right to vote. We had to keep going back over and over again because especially the southern states wanted to limit any freedom that anybody had. Rhett. Sorry. Starts with lady, ends with Rhett. All right. Up until 1875, I just think it is interesting. Up until 1875, there was 23 equal rights bills passed. Men in 1875, end of the 19th century, they were judges, they were attorneys, they served in the military, they held office, they had property rights, there was segregation had been eliminated. And in 1892, so for many, many years, all that happened. In the 19th century, in the 1800s, blacks had full freedoms because we had passed 23 laws, and black men were serving in Congress, and they were judges. We even had a Speaker of the House that was a black man, and we'll be learning his name. And in 1892, Democrats took over the House and they took over Congress, and they drummed every black man out of office. So in 1892, Democrats drummed every black man out of office. They repealed all 23 laws giving black men the right to anything, right to vote, right to anything. Just rights to anything. I shouldn't have said right to vote. And so when that happened in 1892, up until 1944, not that many years ago, you guys, some of your parents, it was just before your parents' time, so in your grandparents' time maybe, civil rights, it was a big thing, and then all the civil rights got passed. People don't know, that is not the first time civil rights got passed. All these civil rights happened all the way up to 1875. There was all kinds of civil rights for 23 years. There was a black Speaker of the House. There were black judges, black court justices. There was black men in office everywhere, holding office everywhere. Lawyers, attorneys, doctors, lawyers, whatever you name it. They were in power. The Democrats came in. Remember, they're back in the Union now in 1892. They took over Congress. There was more Democrats than there were Republicans, so they took over Congress, and they repealed every one of those 23 laws. I didn't know that. I bet your parents don't know that. I'd like each one of you guys to tell your parents that, and I bet you they won't believe it. I told my husband, honey, there was a black Speaker of the House in the 1800s. He said, Debbie, you're going to have to give me his name. I'm going to have to look it up for myself. He did not believe me. So, because we have not been taught that in our history. He's a very good student. He was a very good student of history, so that just can't be true. And I said, it was true, but it can't be. You can look at the documents. You can look at the letters. You can look at all the congressional records, okay? In 1944, all the civil rights laws were passed. So if any of y'all have studied the Civil War, did y'all know that? Did you know that before there was the whole, I don't mean Civil War, I mean civil rights. Martin Luther King, who was a Republican, who was a very godly man, up until the civil rights, oh, that's the first time America allowed black men to vote and all that kind of, no. In the 1800s, black Americans had those rights, and then we took them away when Democrats got in power again, took them away. Shameful. So 1944, they got their rights back again. And we also had to pass another thing called the Voting Rights Act, saying no more literacy tests for black people. No changing of the polling places. It's terrible, especially in the southern states, what was happening, making it hard for people to vote. Nobody could have passed those tests. Nobody. Woodrow Wilson, as I said, showed the first KKK film. First film ever in the White House was a KKK film called Birth of a Nation. Terrible, terrible. We had we had racists in office everywhere. And he's the one who helped drum every black man out of office. Matter of fact, Teddy Roosevelt, who started like all the parks and all that kind of stuff, Teddy Roosevelt had Booker T. Washington, some of you might have heard of him, had him come to the White House, actually become one of his advisors, and he was the first black man invited to the White House to be an advisor, and people were outraged about it. The Democrats were outraged about it. So we have a long history in this country. It was the legislature, it was the people, we the people of the United States, that knew years and years ago in the 1800s that there should be no slavery, that there should be no such thing as a black man or a white man, that it's just all men. We're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that all men are created equal, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We knew that, we the people. But these justices and some rogue Democrats think they can outlaw, they can come across with Dred Scott and say that men are property, and they can go and repeal all these rights. So I'm telling you all, we need to know our history so that we can tell people and we can educate people. It's very important. All right, we have one more. I can't believe I did that in one take because I was supposed to do that in 2 separate sections. One more little thing to do, and then you'll be done. I know there's a lot of videos this week, but there's hardly any lap booking. And I just feel like it's just such a short time in class to teach y'all, and we mostly, you know, I'm quizzing you to see what you know and going over lap books and things, and there's just no time. I don't like teaching it one semester, to be honest. It's the first time I've ever taught it one semester, and I go, it's part of the discombobulation of it all, I think, is trying to cram it all in one. So I hope you guys have a great week. You have one more section to watch, and I will see you Friday. Thanks.